Kareem Al-Saidi, a wealthy Dubai property developer, and Emily Carter, a young American yoga instructor, seemed like the perfect fairy tale couple until their dream honeymoon in Zanzibar ended with her brutal death at his hands. When Kareem Al-Saidi first walked into a luxury rooftop lounge in Miami, all eyes followed him. Tall, immaculately dressed, and carrying the quiet confidence of wealth, he stood out among the crowd. Emily Carter noticed him too. She was a 27-year-old yoga instructor from Colorado who had recently moved to Miami in search of new opportunities. Their meeting seemed almost accidental, yet Kareem made sure it wasn't. He introduced himself with charm and immediately drew Emily into his world of luxury. He spoke about skyscrapers he built in Dubai, the endless deals he was closing, and the international lifestyle he lived. Emily, who had grown up far from such extravagance, was captivated. Within weeks, their lives were entwined. Kareem flew her to Dubai for weekends filled with helicopter rides, private dinners on yachts, and shopping trips that left her dizzy with excitement. Friends back home watched through her social media posts, astonished at how quickly her life had changed. Despite the sparkle, there were whispers that Kareem's charm masked something darker. Business associates quietly spoke about his ruthless tactics, his obsession with control, and the enemies he had made. Emily, however, saw only the glamorous side of him. When Kareem proposed with a diamond ring the size of her childhood dreams, she said yes without hesitation. The wedding was nothing short of spectacular. Golden chandeliers, celebrity performers, and hundreds of guests flown in from around the world. Emily's family, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all, believed she found a fairy tale ending. Photographs of the couple smiling beneath cascades of fireworks filled magazines and blogs. To the world, it was a story of love crossing continents, cultures, and classes. Yet beneath the glittering surface, hidden in the shadows of Kareem's smile, was a storm waiting to break. The honeymoon to Zanzibar was supposed to be the perfect beginning to their new life together. For Emily, the island felt like a dream. White sand beaches, turquoise water stretching endlessly, and palm trees swaying in the breeze. She snapped photos of the sunsets, the ornate wooden doors of Stone Town, and the romantic dinners by the shore. To her followers back home, it looked like paradise. But the images didn't show the unease building beneath the surface. Kareem, who had once been attentive and affectionate, now seemed restless and quick to anger. Small disagreements over meals or schedules would spark sudden outbursts. He disliked how easily Emily spoke with locals and grew jealous when she laughed too freely around strangers. His need for control tightened with each passing day. Emily tried to push aside her worries, telling herself that marriage was an adjustment, that travel could be stressful. She hoped Kareem's short temper was nothing more than fatigue from endless business calls. Yet those calls stretched late into the night. He would step out to the balcony, voice raised as he argued in Arabic with associates back in Dubai. Emily lay awake listening, sensing pressure she didn't understand. The charm that had swept her off her feet was unraveling, replaced by a sharp edge that made her cautious around him. At the resort, staff began noticing the contrast. During breakfast, Emily appeared cheerful, but her eyes lingered on the horizon as if searching for escape. Kareem often sat beside her, scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging her presence. By the third day, Emily no longer posted as frequently online. The fairy tale honeymoon she had imagined was fading quickly, replaced by an undercurrent of fear she dared not admit, even to herself. The paradise of Zanzibar was becoming a gilded cage. Emily's light-hearted nature clashed more and more with the dark cloud that seemed to hang over Kareem. While she wanted to explore the winding alleys of Stone Town, shop at the spice markets, and swim freely in the ocean, Kareem preferred to isolate himself in their suite. He was constantly on his phone, pacing like a caged animal, his tone sharp and impatient. Sometimes his calls ended with him slamming the device onto the table, his face flushed with anger. Emily didn't know the details, but whispers of financial ruin followed him from Dubai. Investors were growing nervous, and several of his projects had stalled. To a man like Kareem, whose identity was built on power and wealth. Failure was unbearable. The more he unraveled, the more controlling he became. He questioned Emily about her time alone, about the people she spoke to, even about the glances she received from strangers at the resort. She felt suffocated, as though her every move was under surveillance. To cope, she threw herself into long swims in the warm sea, the water offering her temporary freedom. Resort staff noticed how often she dined alone, ordering small meals and staring at her phone with a distracted expression. On one occasion, she appeared visibly shaken, as if deciding whether to call someone but then stopping herself. Her social media posts grew sparse and carefully curated, hiding the truth of her growing fear. Friends back home, who had once envied her life, began to wonder why her updates had slowed. Kareem's drinking increased, and the empty bottles piling up in the room hinted at his unraveling state of mind. What had begun as a glamorous escape was becoming an emotional battlefield, with Emily silently caught in the middle of Kareem's crumbling empire and his rising rage. On their fourth night in Zanzibar, the tension that had been simmering between Kareem and Emily finally erupted. They had returned from a dinner, where Kareem drank heavily, his mood swinging from forced charm to simmering hostility. As soon as the villa door closed, the facade collapsed. Shouts rang out, sharp enough for nearby guests to pause in confusion. Objects clattered to the floor, the sound of glass breaking slicing through the night air. What had begun as an argument escalated quickly, years of Kareem's unchecked rage boiling over in a matter of minutes. Kareem stormed out into the humid night, pacing the garden like a predator circling its cage. His chest heaved with anger, his fists clenched as if the very act of walking away had been too merciful. But he didn't stay gone. Within minutes, he returned to the villa, his fury reignited. Inside, Emily stood frozen, fear written across every part of her. She had endured his anger before, but never like this. The argument flared again, this time unstoppable. Kareem lashed out, his violence overwhelming. By the time the rage subsided, Emily's body was crumpled on the floor, motionless and broken. Panic set in almost instantly. Kareem's arrogance gave way to desperation as he dragged her into the bathroom, turning on the shower in a frantic attempt to mask what he had done. He wiped surfaces, rearranged furniture, and tried to stage the scene as though Emily had slipped, fallen, and struck her head. Yet no amount of rearranging could erase the brutality of what had taken place. Outside, the resort was quiet, unaware of the nightmare unfolding within the villa. But the storm that had been hidden behind Kareem's wealth and charm had finally erupted, leaving a crime that could not be concealed. By morning, Kareem had crafted his story. He phoned the resort's front desk with a controlled, almost rehearsed tone, claiming his wife had suffered a terrible accident in the bathroom. Staff rushed to the villa, expecting to find a tragic but ordinary mishap. Instead, they were met with a disturbing scene that immediately raised questions. Emily's body was covered in injuries far too extensive for a simple fall. Her arms and neck bore deep bruises, and bloodstains on the walls suggested violence rather than accident. The shower was still running, as if someone had tried to wash away evidence. Police were quickly called to the resort. Forensic experts began their work, documenting every detail inside the villa. They noted patterns in the blood that revealed signs of struggle, not a single slip. The bruising on Emily's neck indicated strangulation, and the marks on her arms showed she had fought back. Nothing aligned with Kareem's account. His version of events unraveled further when investigators checked Emily's phone. On it, they discovered unsent text drafts in which she expressed fear for her safety. In one, she wrote about feeling like she was walking on eggshells, though she never had the chance to send it. Guests at the resort also came forward with observations. Several had heard shouting late that night, followed by loud crashes. One couple admitted they saw Kareem storm out of the villa, looking furious, before returning minutes later. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together quickly, and none of them favored Kareem. News of the case spread like wildfire. What had once been a picture-perfect honeymoon was now splashed across international headlines as a crime scene. The glamorous developer's reputation collapsed overnight, and suspicion hung heavily over him as investigators built their case. Kareem never made it out of Zanzibar. Before he could arrange a flight back to Dubai, authorities placed him under arrest, charging him with the murder of his wife. In the courtroom, he appeared calm, dressed in tailored suits, as if trying to maintain the image of the powerful businessman he once was. His defense team worked tirelessly to create doubt, portraying Emily as reckless, claiming she had slipped after drinking wine, and that Kareem had panicked in shock. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. Forensic reports showed the extent of her injuries could only have come from a violent assault. Witnesses testified about the shouting and sounds of a struggle on the night of her death. The resort staff described his erratic behavior, and investigators presented photographs of the stage bathroom that betrayed his attempt at cover-up. The most damning revelation came when financial investigators uncovered that just weeks before the wedding, Kareem had taken out a multi-million-dollar life insurance policy on Emily. The discovery shifted the case from a crime of passion to a calculated act of desperation. His property empire in Dubai was collapsing under debt, and Emily's death would provide a way to inject millions into his failing business. The jury no longer saw him as a grieving husband, but as a manipulative man who had married for profit and control. When the verdict was delivered, guilty of murder, Kareem's mask finally cracked. He was sentenced to life in prison, his fortune seized, and his empire dismantled piece by piece. Emily's family, devastated but determined, used her story to warn others about the hidden dangers behind glossy appearances. What began as a dazzling fairy tale romance ended as a chilling reminder that even in paradise, darkness can lurk behind the brightest smiles.